We wrote this right after Jackpot, in between Jackpot and North Fork. Even though North Fork was already written, we decided let's do something that has us very much about what we wanted to do. You know, do something that's strange, but also keep it. You can only go one way with a rocket. You're going to make a movie about a rocket. It's going to have to launch sometime within the movie, and you go one way with that one, and so it keeps a linear structure, and it worked. And I said to Mark one day, "How about we make a movie about a guy who builds a rocket in his barn?" And I wanted to see if that was a litmus test. I wanted to see if that worked, and he said, "Yeah, that'd be a pretty good idea."
So when we talked last, you were talking about the financing for North Fork
Right.
and your other films, and you told some pretty
That
interesting,
was,
Yeah, that was a good one.
our disaster pick.
interesting stories. But did you have anything like that with this film, or being that it's a bigger studio?
The first time dailies went back, when we, because we have such fans that are inside the studio, inside Warner Brothers, that followed us all the way from Twin Falls. They were actually the first studio that invited us in for meetings after Twin Falls was released. And some of the executives that were there are now pretty high up in the chain of command at Warner Brothers. So we turned in Astronaut Farmer. He, one of the executives sat us down and said, "Look, I know you guys can make a rock look pretty, but stick to the story, and you guys will have a really good movie on your hands."
Wow, that's
So he's
nice.
basically giving us a pep talk. But the first images that went back was the astronaut on the horse.
And he
On the
looked
thing.
at the, he
He
just
looked
and he
and he
called
just-
us. He called Mark. We actually called an executive that was appointed to the project and said, "You better get your butt down there. They're making a freaking Fellini movie."
right after he tells us to ship up and make sure we stick to the
Yeah,
script.
after the pep talk, the next thing he sees is what exactly he didn't want to see.
Really?
Yeah, so,
But you guys got
Yeah.
to keep that.
yeah,
Yeah,
no, we
we
kept
gotta
it.
keep
He
that. I
understood
mean,
that was.
the title sequence, and it wasn't anything, and it was y'all you learn that you want to send prettier pictures back and things that satisfy them early on. But
Mhm.
we had no other opportunity but time to shoot that title sequence but the first couple of days. So ideally that wasn't the first image we wanted to send back to them. I mean, ideally to us that was the
It
best
was
image
like
of the
sending
movie.
an image from the moon. The first image.
No,
of the moon.
it really was.
Yeah.
Didn't. It just kind of catches us off guard, and
Yeah.
you've done that before.
Right.
Yeah.
With what was it, Jackpot,
Mm-hmm.
where the film starts out
Yeah.
backwards.
Yeah, it starts
starts out
backwards.
and,
Yeah.
and it's being shot through a tape deck.
And
Yeah.
in North Fork is a coffin floating on a lake.
One particular reviewer who just went after the film, saying this is bad, this is the type of film, but then continued to go after it after there was good reviews, saying, "I can't believe there's good reviews about this film."
Why though?
And I
Yeah.
was sitting back going, "Wow!"
And we
it
usually
really
don't pay
upset
attention
him.
to that stuff, but since we're producers,
Yeah.
Sure.
you get filtered everything. I mean, the studio sends you everything, so you at the end of the week you just get a catalog, and so you have to pay attention to some of that stuff as a producer. As a filmmaker, you could sort of slag it off, but as a producer and
You have to make sure that they're
what's going in the ads,
Mhm.
what the commercials are going to be cut like, and what quotes they're going to use, you sort of have to go through everything. And so when you start seeing these a lot of cynical behavior, and you're going, "Wow, this is strange
it
for
hit
society."
you where it hurts.
Well, do you-
Sometimes
did-
this film does.
I mean, does it? Because it's obviously a personal.
Mhm.
It's something. This is your dream.
Yes.
This is
Yeah.
your rocket
Yeah,
ship. But
exactly.
when people start, giving these cynical
Mhm.
reviews, I mean, you got to take that somewhat personally.
Well,
Sometimes, I mean, you can. I mean, it depends on the mindset you have. If you sit there and go, "He doesn't truly know me. He's attacking your art, or what you're putting out there." So, I mean, I think Twin Falls was a little bit more because you get used to it, but then you realize, no one grew up to be a critic. That wasn't their goal in life. So,
Yeah.
Is it that those who can't,
Yeah,
teach, and
yeah.
those who can't teach
really
PE,
could-
and those who can't
You
are
really,
critics.
you really can't
they
tell
didn't
me
make a
that.
statue out of a critic.
Yeah, you really can't tell me that somebody who's critiquing movies, that was their main goal.
Mhm.
And
You
then
know.
and then you meet them, and then you meet a few of them, and then they'll nudge, and they'll say, "Well, I'm writing a screenplay that is being optioned."
Are you serious?
Yeah, there's a lot of screenwriters that are journalists.
Just frustrated.
Yeah.
It's that mentality of they come to the movie and they say, "Well, this can't happen," and you kind of want to say, before you walk in, it's called a movie. We wanted it to be something that looked and felt organic. That how does a rocket go sideways, and one part of it's like an old Warner Brothers cartoon, where it goes through the sign, it keeps going, it's spinning like the Wile E. Coyote.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you blend that? So we were shooting everything practical, the explosions, the fire, the barn, and then we were laying in the CGI. So we blended it, which was a different way of doing it, where most people would say make it all CGI. You know,
I mean,
computer generated.
there was even talk early on of making the whole rocket CGI, and Mike and I, being from even Twin Falls, saying there's a level of believability you have to send to the crew and to
Oh,
the
interesting.
actors,
Yeah.
that if you don't build this rocket 80 feet tall and you don't show them with this guy, then no one's ever going to believe it. No one's ever going to see it. And once you built it, you saw the whole aspect of people's attitude change on the set. And people from the town were coming in just to see this thing because it looked real. I mean, it was only 15 feet below an actual replica of what a
Mhm.
replica would look like of the Mercury Atlas. So it was very inspiring to build those sets, the barn and the rocket. So and it was really important, even with Twin Falls, Idaho, to have the crew see what the twins' fusion looked like, so that everyone can get on board and say and kind of be champions of the project.
Yeah, and just back to Twin Falls, I
Okay.
mean, there were no you didn't have
There was
CGI
no
back.
CGI there.
So you basically took, what is it, a football and
Yeah, football
on
on
a
our
peg.
knee.
Yeah.
foot,
and a
football
peg.
underneath
The
it,
captain, what's the
and
Captain Bly
Yeah,
leg or
yeah.
whatever.
and it really worked for you because of the difficulty
Yeah.
to be able to maneuver.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that makes really really a lot of sense. There's more
Yeah,
invested.
there's more invested in your audience at that point is your crew.
Does that, by not relying on CGI, you know, even though the technology
Okay.
is available, I mean, does that force you to become more creative? Because I mean, if you
Yeah,
think about
it does.
films we had
Yeah.
before, they
Yeah.
just did so much
Yeah.
with so little.
There's always inherent complexities when you do a movie like even North Fork, where you want to build the dam and but you find that your limitations ends up being your creativity. You know, you find out that if you can't do this, well, what's the next thing we can do? Whereas most films now, or most films that you see that are put with a lot of money, you can throw money at most of your problems. In independent films or lower budget films, you can't throw money at it. You have to really throw ingenuity.